So what do you think about Disney tokenizing and de-romancing Ariel and Snow White? We've quickly moved on the socials from talking about the tokenization of Tolkien to the tokenization of Ariel from The Little Mermaid, with people, per usual, complaining that mythical mermaids can be any color and oh my god, you're such a racist. This is disingenuous nonsense and not a serious argument, unless, like I stated in my Rings of Power tokenization video, the people making this argument are willing to apply that standard if it's make-believe it doesn't matter to all ideas, cultures, and races. But we know that argument is nonsense considering Disney went out of their way to cast non-white actors in Aladdin for a movie about genies and sorcery because of where the fable originated. If the story comes from Arabia, we have to be culturally sensitive to the history of the story and the peoples. But when it comes from Northern Europe, all of a sudden sensitivity and cultural norms fly right out of the window. Per the norm, this is just dishonest nonsense masqueraded as diversity, equity, and inclusion. 3 words that only ever apply in one direction. My big beef with the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid, beyond the problem that these live-action remakes are typically worse than the direct-to-VHS sequels that Walt Disney Television Animation used to churn out, is that the cast stated up front that they didn't understand the protagonist. The actresses Disney hired to play the lead characters in the live-action remakes of The Little Mermaid and Snow White have stated that Ariel and Snow White wouldn't be defined by needing a man's love. And that is about as jaded and mired in identity politics as you can get while not understand the characters you're playing. Snow White, in the classic and first fully Disney animated film, was focused on surviving and being a good housemate to the dwarves who took her in when her stepmother tried to end her life for the sin of being beautiful. Then, because Snow is beautiful, her stepmother poisons and curses her, with the curse only being able to be broken by true love's kiss. That Snow longs to be loved, like most people do, is central to the plot, sure, but to say that this is her defining feature is lazy and jaded. Her character isn't defined by a man's love, she needs true love to break the curse. Those two things are not the same, and the people complaining that this love angle is a problem are only mad because, ding ding ding, it's heterosexual love. If Disney had the balls to piss off the Chinese and Middle Eastern censors by making Prince Charming a princess, nobody who is currently reading themselves about how this character was defined would claim that she was now defined by Princess Charming. Once again, using another live-action Disney movie, none of these people complained when the Beast needed Belle's love to break his curse. You can more easily complain that the Beast was defined by needing Belle's love than you can Snow being defined by needing Prince Charming's love. And yet, the same goes for Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Ariel was never defined by herself or others with needing a man's love. She was an adventurous character who defied social conventions, rebelled against her father and king, and in doing so fell in love. That the love was a man doesn't mean that she was defined by that man. Ariel was no more defined by Eric than any of the Dinglehoppers or banded bulbous snarfblats in her collection. To say that Ariel is defined by wanting Eric to reciprocate her love is to remove her agency and replace her love at first sight with the core of her being. It's a forbidden love, and that's as important, arguably more so, than the target of Cupid's bow. But people like to force things on characters and stories as a way to change them because missing the point and creating specters where there are none makes for easy justification to push your agenda or to escape criticisms of a subpar product. Allow me to illustrate by way of example. I'll contend that The Little Mermaid was a trans allegory and that it embraces a non-binary perspective. For the record, I don't believe this, but hear me out. Ariel's desire for wanting Eric wasn't straight, insofar as she was half fish and he was a human. The Little Mermaid is about an interspecies relationship, a love that cannot be biologically. Ariel's journey is one of a transhuman as she hid her true self from Eric with magic and ruse, knowing full well their romance could never be without a more permanent magic needed to transform one of them enough to be compatible with the other. If she couldn't convince Eric to kiss her and make her transformation complete, something only her dearest friends supported and unknown even to Eric, she'd be returned to the mermaid she was always doomed to be, in a body she didn't want. Eric has to decide that who Ariel is on the inside matters most, that he loves her enough to risk his life even if it means never being with her in a human form. And only after that does he decide to murder the woman who held legal sway over Ariel, because to do otherwise would bind Ariel to the very laws of the sea and magic. And after all that, Ariel still has to convince her father to break with social norms so she can be allowed to fully transition and be happy. Ariel always wanted to be human. She always wanted to leave the sea. She found Eric on this journey, and he helped hasten her retreat from the ocean, and their love, forbidden as it was, is what saved them both. You see, it's a trans love story. Or is it? If I wanted to be as cynical as Disney and the people making these lazy tokenized live-action reboots, I'd strip Ariel of her fish hat to remove the trans allegory I just made up. And then when the Rainbow Mafia started calling me names, I'd just call them trolls and haters for being mad that I antagonized them on purpose. Because that is all that Disney, their cast and crew, are doing with this trash. They're misrepresenting characters from beloved films and changing them in ways that are socially approved at their cocktail parties and award shows to pat themselves on the backs for being so stunningly brave and bravely stunning. Just like with the Rings of Power, I'll contend that almost nobody, trolls and clickbait bullshit artists aside, would care that Ariel was being portrayed by a black girl if the race swapping wasn't always one direction and the outrage to the criticisms wasn't so nonsensical. But the news is cynically replete with PR hand-wringing. Cool, little black girls are super excited to see a black Ariel, and the video warms the hearts of the studio and media shills pushing the race-swapping agenda, as though little redheads wouldn't have been just as excited to see Ariel still representing them. But again, this is a war over changing a specific culture, as opposed to the honest quest for an equal and diverse media landscape. It is not equitable, diverse, or inclusive to say that one group or various groups deserve representation at the expense of a singular and specific other. If you expect me to be okay with Ariel being black, I expect you to be okay with a race swap Tiana or Jasmine or Pocahontas or. And yet to even seriously discuss such casting would likely get you blacklisted from the studio lot and called the very racist they're calling us now for, like them in other circumstances, wanting an actress to look like the character being portrayed. Funny how it all works, isn't it? And that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching, listening, sharing, subscribing, yada yada yada. Cheers.